Good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be here today. I'm most excited to be in the presence of some of my friends that I used to hang out with at the conferences. And the last time we've seen each other was prior to the pandemic, so to actually be in your presence again is truly a pleasure. Every single day we get up in our respective practice to deliver high quality, safe anesthesia care. And we do that every single day, but the other aspect of anesthesia that we also do is the advocating part of it. We do this on a daily basis, and it's a very important piece of what we do. We know that here in the United States, that there have been pockets of the United States that lack access to nurse anesthesia care. And so that being said, there's rural areas, there's urban settings, there's the Indian reservations, there's the veterans that need our care. And in some of those settings, we provide 100% of the anesthesia care. So when we look beyond our borders in places like sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, India, that demand for nurse anesthesia care actually intensifies. And yet, there is a population of people out there that need surgical care, and surgical care cannot happen without us. So my topic today is facilitating the development, growth, and sustainability of nurse anesthesia in Liberia. So my objectives today are simple: to give a little history of Liberian nurse anesthesia education, to discuss progress towards level 2 IFNA recognition, which this school currently has, to discuss current activities to support the learning process, to highlight the current barriers and constraints of what we're trying to achieve there, and to also discuss the role of developing Liberian nurse anesthetists. So for a long period of time, the training in Liberia relied on international organizations that came in and basically did modular style kind of education. So they'll come in and they'll teach them how to do airway, they'll teach them how to do spinals, which they're very proficient in. They'll teach them the anesthesia machine and other little things like that. And then they would leave. And so that wasn't sustainable. That is not the kind of education that would actually churn out a proficient, safe, quality healthcare provider to provide anesthesia. So in 2015, the Phoebe School turned to the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists to take an assessment of their curriculum and to upgrade their curriculum, and that's what they did. So the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists came in, I'm not sure which body actually came in, and they did an assessment of the curriculum. So the curriculum was rewritten, and so now they have a competency-based, didactic, clinical-based curriculum where they're required, it's a 72 credit program, and they require 250 case, with different complexities in different specialties to get through. So in 2016, the curriculum was accepted by the Liberian Board of Nursing and Midwifery and the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists. So then they earned level 2 recognition. They're working really diligently to become fully accredited, but they have a lot of obstacles right now to getting there, but we're making progress at the moment. But level 2 is good for them. They have that actually until 2024. So what's the current status of the school? And this is progress, right? Like what I just talked about is a school that went through some rough times. They had modular style kind of education, didn't have a lot of faculty, relied on a lot of international bodies to come in to do anesthesia too. To a school that actually merged with a college and is now a college, and this is the transition we are at right now. So they weren't always the Phoebe Esther Bacon College of Health Sciences. They just became that recently. But prior to that, they were the Phoebe School of Nurse Anesthesia, basically a training facility. They've earned International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists recognition, level 2, from 2019 to 2024, where in 2024 they'll have to go through the process again. It is a 72 credit, 250 case style program. It's front loaded like a lot of our programs here in America. The first year is where they get basics of anesthesia, and the second year they get advanced anesthesia care. And the graduates takes the Liberian Liberian Board of Nurse and Midwifery National Examination, and upon completion and passing of that examination, become registered nurse anesthetists in the APRN status according to the International Council of Nursing. There's a lot of facility restrictions at FEEB to physically and financially support more students. Very small classrooms. They don't have a simulation lab. They only have like 2 ORs on site. Again, once these nurse anesthetists get trained, because of the lack of pay, the lack of growth opportunities, retention can be a problem once they finish. And so that's the other kind of hole in the bucket, so to speak, when it comes to trying to maintain a strong workforce. Other barriers. There's an inadequate number of computers and internet. Internet is very spotty at best, and that makes it very challenging for us because we do a lot of work online with these guys. And I'll get to that in just a second. There's small classroom sizes, minimal simulation equipment, inadequate number of textbooks, there's low funding, inadequate anesthesia equipment and drugs. When I went over there, I pulled out the anesthesia drug cart, I was just like, wow. I mean, you really don't have a lot to work with. Part of translating what we learn up here is actually being able to work with drugs. And if you don't have the drugs to work with, a lot of what you're learning, it just kind of, it just falls out of practice. There's a limited number of functioning monitors, a low number of CRNA mentors and preceptors, and of course the poverty. And so this stands in the way of them getting full IFNA accreditation. But there's been a lot of progress too. So even though it seems daunting, you really got to kind of sit back and think about all the progress they've made. Because the one thing I can say, and the one thing that it makes me very happy to work with them, is that they are diligent. They're sponges. They want this, and they work hard for it. And so they have a good team of people that are behind them and pushing them forward. So we've made a lot of progress in just the short time that I've actually been involved in this entire thing. So they recently became, like I said, the Phoebe Esther Baker College of Health Sciences. Again, level 2 recognition. They've increased the workforce. When I was there, it was only 70 CRNAs to 5.4 million people, right, which most of them were concentrated on the west coast of Africa in the capital. Some of the CRNAs that we're working with actually earned a master's in education to help them, get the skill sets to actually help teach. They've increased the affiliate sites. They're moving from a diploma, right now it's a diploma program, to a BSN program, and from a BSN program, they're in the works of upgrading to a master's degree program, and then ultimately the DNP program. They've established a US-based education faculty, and that's the Boston African Anesthesia Collaborative, to help them with, to kind of shore them up. And so a few of us, including myself, are sort of visiting faculty, which we teach online via Zoom. So I teach leadership and management for them. We have a couple of CRNAs that one teaches anatomy and physiology 1, another one does pharmacology, and then Eileen does evidence-based practice. So they have in terms of faculty, Mr. Foster, Mr. Aaron Sona, which you'll see him in just a second, and maybe a couple others to help them teach not only the courses, but to coordinate the clinical sites and to also advocate for the infrastructure and the other things that they need to become a fully functioning school. So the Lancet study states that a goal for the low to middle income countries is to have 5 nurse anesthetists per 100,000 people. Of course, at 100, FEEP still falls well below. In order for them to get there, they'll need about at least 300 to meet this goal. So we still have a ways to go, but we're getting there. So what is the Boston Africa Anesthesia Collaborative? So essentially, I like to take a little credit for this. This kind of came together not many years ago. I'd say back in 2018, and when the way I got involved in this, it was actually by accident. My chief had come to me and she had asked me to do a PowerPoint presentation during the Year of the Nurse Conference at the University of Massachusetts, Boston in 2018. And so she said, you know, Dono, I can't do it. Do you mind doing it? The slide deck is already ready. All you gotta do is deliver it. And I said, okay, fine. And so I was looking through the slide deck and I said, whoa, I said, this is a little bit different. This is very different, in fact, in terms of mission trips. You know, we all probably, many of us have gone on mission trips. We do it on an annual basis. I think it's a very important part of anesthesia to be able to do that for communities that don't have the care that they need. But the thing with mission trips is this, is that we pack our stuff, we go into our location, we're there for about 5 to 10 days or whatever, and then we leave. But because we left doesn't mean the demand for anesthesia services left. In fact, they increased. So this project was different because it was dealing with it from a different perspective. And that is to build the workforce, to strengthen the capacity over there, and to allow, you know, the natives to lead this with, with our help and resources. Because in the end, the only way that we solve this issue is that each one of these countries builds their workforce and meets the needs on a daily basis. And that's how we're going to kind of solve this. And so when I looked at this slide deck, I said, oh, wow, this is a pretty interesting thing. And Eileen, at the time, I was working with her, and I said, Eileen, do you mind if I kind of shoot this into my department? Because I think there's a lot of nurse anesthetists that might find this very interesting and want to contribute to it. And she said, yes. And so I shot it up the department, and it actually had a snowball effect, and it snowballed effect into this actual thing, which is not a formal organization, sort of an informal organization with some formalities to it. And so what is it? It is a combination of the Boston Children's Hospital, nurse anesthetists from the Boston Children's Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and teaching nurse faculty from Northeastern University and Phoebe School of Nurse Anesthesia. What are some of our activities? A lot of our activities has to do with, well, initially it started with just raising money and getting on a Zoom call with these guys and allowing them to talk about interesting cases that they had, which they had maybe some conflict or some complication during the case, and they get to kind of bounce ideas. So it was sort of a peer-reviewed mentorship sort of process between the nurse anesthetists here in America and the Liberian nurse anesthetists. We have this program where we have visiting faculty from the school over there, from the school over there, and they come to Boston and they spend some time at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center as well as Northeastern University. And essentially our goal is not to teach the students. What we're trying to do is fortify the faculty and the preceptors on the best practices on teaching and clinical precepting. And so when they come to our ORs, and ideally, and we just started, well, I'm not there anymore, but they just started getting Northeastern students in the operating room. So ideally what we wanted to have them do is kind of sit while we're actually precepting another nurse anesthetist, student nurse anesthetist in the operating room to get best practices. And so they do that for 4 weeks. They also spend some time in Northeastern universities where they actually get some didactic work on best practices on educating and precepting. And then they do a capstone project, and at the end of this capstone project, they earn a certificate in advanced anesthesia, and they bring that back to Liberia. Some other things that we do is some of the money that we use, that we've raised, we actually use to buy them these tablets. And so these tablets are actually very powerful because what we do is we upload a lot of the anesthesia text that we've learned from on the tablets. And so they don't have to pay for it. They don't have to lug those big books around. Also we upload a lot of literature, some articles on these things. And so they have a portable device with all the educational needs that they have on it to learn their schoolwork from. They can bring it in the operating room, they can bring it home, they can bring it everywhere. It's Wi-Fi, it has a Wi-Fi, and it's also got some, they can buy data for it too. So each student gets one of these when they get into the program.
My name is Benson Tanjong, and I'm here in the company of my classmates.
Muriel Kameni. Maria Ray.
And we are all final year Webster students. We have 3 weeks to our graduation. We met at Webster in 2020 by pure coincidence. We never knew each other. So when it came to time to do our capstone project, we decided that it was nice, it was important for us to do something that was going to be more impactful, especially to the people back in Cameroon. And that is why we wanted to do something that could add something a little bit to their skill set. And we made a little bit of research around and realized that introducing labor epidurals, which is something that is not common in their practice, will be something that will be very, very important, and at least we added something to their skill set. And I think as of now, a lot of people, the feedbacks we are getting is that they already started practicing this. So the topic for today is distance learning education on labor epidurals to nurse anesthetists in Cameroon. As objective, we discussed healthcare disparities in Cameroon, gain an understanding of the educational system in Cameroon, understand the benefits of how distance learning education can be used to augment labor epidurals among nurse anesthetists in Cameroon. So, Cameroon is a West African country with a population of about 27 million people. And according to WHO statistics, there is a health crisis in Cameroon. And this health crisis is stemming from the fact that we have a lot of lack of resources, and this lack of resources are not just material, but there are lack of resources in terms of human resources as well. In 2017, the sub-Saharan African accounted for about 2/3 of maternal global deaths, and that represents about 196,000 deaths per year. Now, if you go to Cameroon, you realize that even within Cameroon, there are a lot of differences, there are a lot of wide gaps, differences between the healthcare personnel in the rural area and those in the urban area as well. So you see a lot of doctors and anesthesiologists, and mostly CRNS want to be only within the regional, and sometimes most of them accumulate within Douala and Yaoundé, for those who know Cameroon very well. But if you step out of those areas and go down a little bit to the rural areas, you see that there is a wide gap between how many nurse anesthetists are actually available. So there is lack of regulation and accreditation. It's not like here in the US where everything is standardized, where there are so many regulations that you need to follow. In Cameroon, we don't have those regulations. We don't have, there is accreditation. They give you an authorization to open a school, but to actually follow up on the training and all of that does not really exist in that system. Now, if you want to compare the statistics between what is going on in Cameroon and what is going on in the United States, you realize that first, we really don't have real data what is going on the ground in Cameroon, and that is one, I think that is one of the areas we really need to work on, by really knowing how many nurse anesthetists are in Cameroon, where are they practicing, and what are the resources and all of that. We really don't have that. However, from few sources that we gathered, we realized that there are about one anesthesiologist to 799,180 inhabitants, and one anesthetist to 112,000 inhabitants. If you do the maths well, that's going to give you a ratio of about 0.75 nurse anesthesia providers per 100,000 population. The standard requires that you have at least 5 to 10 providers to 100,000, but we are at about 0.75. That is far, far, far below the expected ratio. Now, in Cameroon, that's where we have one medical doctor serving 70,000 Cameroonian patients. These anesthesiologists, out of Douala and Yaoundé, you don't find them anywhere in Cameroon. Most of them are around Douala and Yaoundé, some maybe Bafoussam. In Bamenda, you have none. But then, most people in Cameroon don't live in those urban areas. Most people in Cameroon live around the rural areas. So who gives them anesthesia? What type of anesthesia do they give them? How safe is it? It's the question that have remained unanswered. So we make inferences to the study carried out by Patel et al. They did similar studies in Ethiopia, and that study was carried at Emory University School of Medicine. The study aimed to determine how they could use traditional-based curriculum to augment the introduction of interactive educational sessions and distribution learning using video lectures. So it was kind of similar to what we did, because it was all about distance learning. They were able to, we used almost the same frame model of what they did, and we were able to come out with some findings. Their studies were based on airway management, electrolyte abnormalities, volatile agents, and stuff like that. And they used 17 anesthesiologist residents who were involved. Their results showed that overall, their pre-test and post-test were compared, and they came out that there was a knowledge increase from 54.5% to 83.6%. So they did a pre-test, they did some teaching, and then they did a post-test after that. And there was an increase in knowledge from 54.5% to 83.6% based on their studies. Now, to be able to do this work very well, you need to understand what is the educational system in Cameroon, what does it look like. As of now, as we speak, there are two types of anesthesia training programs in Cameroon. There are master's level anesthesia providers, and then there are diplomas anesthesia providers. There are 4 CRNA schools in Cameroon right now. One is within the Cali University, where they do the master's program, and then there are 3 diploma programs. When I left Cameroon in 2016, I studied at the Cali University, and as of that time, that program was just a diploma program. So what does it take to go into each of these programs? When you have a diploma, like what we call here registered nurse or state registered nurse, as they call it in Cameroon, you need to practice for 2 years. You need to take an entrance exams. You pass that exams, and then you go into training for 2 years. And when you finish that training, you get to write a national, like a board exams there to be able to practice. That's exactly what happens in Cameroon. Now, if you to go into the master's program, you need to get a bachelor just like here, but you don't need that entrance exams. You don't need to write like a state final exams. So the master's people come straight from being a BSN holder. You apply to the program, they look at your study you filed, they get you into the program, you finish the program, and you're set out to practice. Now, are there any standards of like how many clinical hours to do, how many cases you need to get before you graduate? No, it doesn't exist in Cameroon. So the program has so much laissez-faire that people just walk in and walk out. And I'm sure some of the problems that people have been getting there comes from the way the training is being rolled down. Now, as I said, there are no regulations. The only regulatory body is the Ministry of Public Health. Again, as you know, the way Cameroon is, they have very good laws on paper, but to actually make sure that those laws are actually implemented do not really exist. So the Ministry of Public Health is supposed to be doing a lot, but you don't see them out of that. And then finally, the board exam that you take it once and that's it. There's no recertification. And then once you go into and you start practicing, there are no chances for you for continuous education. So what you know when you leave school, a lot of people never open their books, a lot of people never, that's it. It just ends there. So it tells you that they might not be current of the recent changes that are happening in the world of anesthesia as well.
I'll be going over this next section. The purpose of our study was to evaluate the effectiveness of distance learning education on labor epidural among Cameroonian nurse anesthetists. The research question stated, does distance education improve the knowledge on labor epidural among Cameroonian nurse anesthetists? For the hypothesis, we came up with two hypotheses. The alternative hypothesis, there will be an improvement in Cameroonian nurse anesthetist knowledge based on labor epidural administration and management using various distance learning tools. And the null hypothesis, there will be no change in their knowledge based on labor epidural administration and management using various distance learning tools. When it comes to the methodology, our study was more of a quantitative study. We had about 43 Cameroonian nurse anesthetists, and with Cameroon being a bilingual country, we pretty much did the entire study in French and English. We had 43 Cameroonian nurse anesthetists. Out of it, 30 were English speakers, and then the other 13 were French speakers. Some of the tools that we used were WhatsApp, which I'm sure most of you know is like an application you can download to your phone and can easily communicate with people around the world. So we use WhatsApp to recruit all the different nurse anesthetists in Cameroon. We sent an announcement to the Cameroonian Nurse Anesthetists on WhatsApp, and whoever was interested to join the group just has to click on the link and join the research project. We used Qualtrics to set up our pre and post test, which both were 25 questions each, and again, it was all in French and English. And we also used Zoom to record all the different videos that we made. It was like anatomy of the spinal cord, contraindication, complication to an epidural, or even demonstration. And we created a YouTube channel called WNAP, Webster Nurse Anesthesia Podcast, which is where we posted all the different videos that we recorded. And just to kind of give you like a rundown, we gave a pre-test to those Cameroonian nurse anesthetists back home just to assess their knowledge based on epidural. And we gave them about like 2 weeks to go over the exam. And after that, we gave them, we released all the different videos on the YouTube channel. We gave them about 2.5 months to go over everything and reach out to us if they had any question. And after that, we gave them the post-test just to see if there were any improvement from the pre-test.
I want to start by just saying it's an honor to be here. This is surreal. A lot of you guys met me in 2018. I was still an ICU nurse, aspiring to go to anesthesia school. It was just an idea. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do it or not. And I showed up here and left with so much enthusiasm, and I found great mentors. And fast forward that to now, I'm a full-blown CRNA working for 3 months now, and it's real. It actually happened, so thank you guys. I was very honored when ACNAA reached out to me and invited me to do my DNP project. I kept my mentors updated on what was happening while I was in school. And it so happened that my DNP project, amongst 2 others, won the DNP Projects of the Year at my university. And not only that, this has now become a thing. My university is now taking students to do mission trips. No, they're taking SRNAs to do mission trips, which is something they never had before. So I'm saying this to say that we may sit here and listen to lectures and not know the impact it has, but you guys have made a difference. Marquette University knows about ACNAA. They remember me, they reached out to me when this happened. And the biggest goal now is for me to lead a team on one of the mission trips that, according to them, I started. So, thank you guys. All right, with that said, I'm gonna be talking about establishing international relationships and SRNA preparedness for global health experiences. As you can see, this was co-authored by one of my colleagues, Michelle Prihoda. And in full disclosure, I have expressed permission from her to present this entire project. It was more of a pyramid-style project, so we started with one topic, and we branched out to 2 nonprofit organizations. I worked with Kenya Relief, and she worked with One Wall, and then we came to the conclusions. 2 of the biggest things that we did about the projects, we had to come up with a policy that would allow the school to get students involved in medical mission trips. And we also had to come up with a checklist to see who can go how do we know you're ready, like a criteria and things like that. So I'll go through all of that throughout this process, but I do have express permission to present this DNP project on our behalf. Background. So the research actually shows that this, not a lot of access in underserved areas to anesthesia services. Well, they can't afford it, first of all. They don't have the resources, and there's not a lot of facilities to start off with. The purpose of foreign aid, according to the U.S. Agency for International Development, is to actually eliminate the need for it. So going out there to help is good, but the bigger goal behind going out there to help is to get these countries independent to where they don't need us to come back and keep helping. So sustainability was a very big part of us going into this project. There's also some research that showed that if we use what they call visiting mission teams to go and establish what we call, I would call it a needs assessment, like go into these communities, find out what they need, what resources do they have, and then come back and design a program and go back there using local resources and extra stuff that we bring to kind of develop them. That, according to research, would create a more sustainable impact than just living here going, I think somebody said for what, 5 to 10 days, and you do a bunch of surgery and you come back, there's no plan for post-op care, there's no continuity, there's no sustainability. It's just, we found a lot of things that, in my opinion, made me take a pause about mission trip. I'm like, okay, if you're gonna go on a mission trip, take the time to really understand why you're doing it, and if you're actually making a difference. Are you hurting these people or are you helping them? Because the goal is to help and make them self-sustaining. The problems was set in, we chose Kenya, because I worked with Kenya Relief, and then there was Honduras, my colleague, she worked with One World, and obviously the Marquette University Nurse Anesthesia program. So Kenya Relief is a faith-based CRNA-owned organization. One of the speakers earlier, I believe it was Dr. Wiggins, had mentioned this. Steve is the founder. Steve James is the founder, and he opened this organization to continue the mission that his daughter started. She used to sponsor some orphan in Kenya, you know, all the TV ads that come up and it says sponsor a kid in Africa. She used to sponsor one of those kids, and she passed away, unfortunately. And he and his wife decided to travel to Kenya to find out who this kid was. And when they got there, they found out there was a lot of need in the area where they went to. And so they made it a habit and they started going. Fast forward to today, Kenya Relief, they do at least 21. When they don't do a lot, they do 21 mission trips to Kenya. They go to Migori, Kenya. And they usually would do anywhere from 21 to 28 in 1 year. They do general surgery, OBGYN, ENT, and most recently, they've opened a maternity over there. They're actually in the process of doing that, so who knows? We might be taking the trip there soon, doing all those epidurals we're talking about.
At this point, I will invite our financial secretary to give us the rundown of the financial report.
I'm going to give a report or a financial summary for the last 2 years. I don't want to go all the way back, knowing we started this association about end of 2016, 2017, and we took over 2 years ago. So I'm going to go through just summary of the last 2 years and then a little bit of this year, starting from January to where we are right now. So ACNAA, as we all know, is a 501c3 association, and that means that we are tax exempt, non-profit, and we're able to, those contributors or donors that donate to our association are able to claim or deduct whatever contribution or support that they give to us up to the maximum limit allowed by the federal government. So 2021, we had about 97 registered members. 57 of them were CRNAs and 40 SRNAs. During that year, from taking over in April towards the end of the year, we had about 70% CRNA that paid their dues, and 100% of the SRNAs paid their dues. This is from some SRNAs paying their own dues by themselves, and also CRNAs sponsoring or supporting SRNA membership. So that year we did really well, and we had 100% SRNA dues paid. We also every year do scholarships that we award to SRNAs, and it's determined per year depending on what's going on. Oh, okay. So $1,500 went to a scholarship, and we gave 5 SRNAs $500 each. We gave 5 SRNAs scholarship of $500 each. 17 SRNAs, remember I talked about CRNAs supporting SRNAs in their membership dues. So CRNAs actually supported SRNAs with 17 of them receiving $50 each towards their membership. That was the year that we had our first mission trip in Cameroon, and we incurred some expenses there. I will show that in the next slide. We also bought like supplies, and we also shipped things to Cameroon towards that CCNA trip. And then there were other things that we did and expenses that we made here in the US that are just miscellaneous, but all towards either awards or the CCNA trip that we had in Cameroon. If you looked at the report then that I posted back in 2021, you would have seen like detailed, itemized detailed information on how the expenses and the incomes were that year. The income that came in that year was a total of about $39,000 plus. Expenses, $16,000 plus. And the net income, that's the income minus the expense of that year. We had about $22,000 with some change. We started off carrying over from 2020, $45,000 in the account, both accounts, and we ended up with a balance of $56,000 and some change. So again, like I said, this is just summary. Here, standing here today, I'm not trying to like go into details of everything, but I'm trying to have all of us see the impact of our contributions, the money. Every time I text you, I bug you with, you know, how is the family doing, trying to like cheer you up and maybe get you to, you know, I go around and around and around, and then I hit the point why I actually called or why I actually text. This is so that we can have enough money in our coffers to accomplish all what we want to do. But the thing I want to really highlight here is just right below it is the amount of $17,000. So that really did not come out of ACNAA's account, but these are people that volunteered to go to Cameroon to have this mission trip accomplished. They spend their monies on, this is just a summary, flight, but again, sometimes food, stuff like that, but flight, lodging, extra luggage, things that they carried or things that they did to make sure that we had that mission trip accomplished. Roughly $17,000. So imagine that going back to the previous slide, we just had $56,000 balance, and then we spent $17,000 from that, plus $5,000 from the extras. We really are draining, and we don't have a lot of people that are paying their dues. So you can see how it can hurt us. And that's why it's so important, you know, that the dues that we bring in really, really will help. On this slide, you know, just to elaborate some more, the actual expenses that we incurred in the US towards that trip. The previous slide was more of what we incurred in or going to Cameroon, like, you know, in Cameroon, and those that paid their flight to go to Cameroon. Here is like buying the souvenirs, the equipment, the mannequins, and all this other stuff, extra $6,000 on top of that previous amount. So that was 2021. 2022, same thing, you know, not to read too much. The highlight there is you can see that the membership dues dropped. We had about 70% and 100%. CRNAs this year here is 45% as opposed to 70%, and SRNA is 58% payment as opposed to 100%. We just had some students here, still students that presented their capstone project for their DNP program. We supported them, you know, to go to Cameroon and help accomplish that. We also supported, and we do support other associations when they reach out to us, you know, so that's also there. The work was getting too much. It was getting overwhelming, and the kind of association we are, normally you have an executive director. We didn't have one, and we decided to try it out, you know, the next executive and then to the general floor, and we decided to try out. So we did get someone. For that year, we paid 3.5 months, so 3.5 months worth. Each month it costs $1,000. So it says 3.5 because of the person started in the middle of the year. The extra money there, that makes it 3,660. Sometimes PayPal fees and stuff like that, we're using PayPal because that's the only thing she could accept. Every time I post, and I plead with you guys, if it's possible, Zelle is preferred. I have tried back and forth to get PayPal to consider us as a 501c nonprofit and just waive the fees. They won't do it. They still consider us as business account. It's little there, but every time this can add up. So if you pay your dues or whatever contribution you give to us, consider adding or paying off the fees associated with it. So that year, about $145 we incurred towards whatever monies came in through PayPal. We have someone running their website for us who paid for that. Buying more medical stuff, because this is the year that we did a second CCNA trip to follow up from the last we had in 2021. So we had a follow-up mission trip in Cameroon this year. We still bought more supplies, not as much buying of supplies because we already had some back there, but we still did incur some expenses. The things we did in Cameroon, you know, food and all the whatever we needed to do to make the event successful, we spent $10,000 on that. Below it, it's not as elaborate as the previous slide, but please pay attention to that figure there. That's $34,000. Again, that is just from all the people that went, excluding two. So look at this number as an exact amount that was submitted to me as expenses, but we still had two people that didn't even respond. So it would have been more than this. So this is, again, remember the lodging, the flight, the extra luggages. We had more people go to Cameroon, and every one of them, we're all busy. So thanks to people that have supported, thanks to people that have volunteered to go. If we had to do this from ACNAA's coffers, I don't think that many people would have gone, and I don't think, would have been able to come up with this much money, plus the 12, plus the 11, the monies will be finished. And on top of that, that year, it's only this much. 45% of us paid our dues. And then 58 of the SRNAs paid their dues. But we want to have this happen.
I am a firm believer in associations should live their mission, right? We shouldn't forget why we came together, because it guides where we are going to sail and go to. When we all signed up, we said, we want to save lives and improve anesthesia care, anesthesia outcomes. The next piece, we want to nurture a robust network amongst ourselves, right? We want to share ideas. We want to elevate our careers. We want to empower each other. We want to support SRNAs. This is what guides us. This is what I signed up for. And as I go through this, I hope that as we leave from here today, we all remember that this is what guides ACNAA. This is what it means to be an ACNAA member. To say, I sign up for this mission to help sail this boat forward. So, what are we doing here today? As part of that mission, we said, let's come today so that we can strengthen, right, anesthesia capacity and improve outcomes in Cameroon. And we've been brainstorming on that. Today, if you notice the way the lectures were set out, we started out by saying, what's the state of science, right? I shared with you some of the work that we are doing, advancing science. Then we brought in advocacy people, right? We said, let's bring in people who actually make sure that by the end of the day, the name ACNAA is recognized. We are in Maryland. The president of Maryland Association of Nurse Anesthetists should know that we are in Maryland. And that is why Kea was here today. We said, hey, all of us and so many people sitting here express interest in the business of anesthesia. We said, let's bring John Bing, one of the heavy hitters in the area of anesthesia business, to come and talk to us about what it takes so that you can pick his brain. That is that networking piece. And then we say, hey, one of our key areas is what? Improving outcomes in Cameroon. Let's bring, Donnell, who has done this in Liberia, so that we can learn from him and say, what can we take away from that as we struggle with what we are doing in Cameroon? That is how the thread of the day is going. But at this point, I want us to take a pause. And first of all, I want to express my sincere gratitude to the executives who have served with me. As you recall, we took over within the pandemic. None of us knew if we're even going to live to the next week, right? It was one of those periods, but they stuck it out. Also, the chairs of the various committees, it takes a village. And again, if you recall in Donnell's presentation, you could see how many people were driving that change. Then think of our capacity. What can we do if those few people were doing that in Liberia? What can 60 CRNAs from Cameroon do if we all dare to stand up and lead? If we all dare to say, you know what, yes, I can disagree with all the politics in Cameroon. I can disagree with everything else going on. But when it happens, when it's your cousin, when it's your aunt, when it's your second or third cousin, and you hear that they are going under anesthesia in Cameroon, you are going to be afraid. We know better. And again, I just want to acknowledge everybody who has dared to stand up and lead. You've made a difference, and I truly appreciate the work that you've done. Professor Verla, who is one of the anesthesiologists in Cameroon, he commented how much he has learned himself from our lectures attending the conference, that we have broken it down in a way that he's never heard. That is the impact we are doing. That is what your $500 is doing in Cameroon. But interestingly, if you recall back home, one of the challenges which has always happened is people come in, promise heaven and earth to Africans, leave, and say we are coming again, and never come back. Which is why, despite all the challenges, we said no. We will go back in 2022, partly because we wanted to ensure that we show that when we say we will deliver, we will deliver. It was to plant that seed in them that yes, we are not in for a single jump in and out, we are in for the long haul to really work with you. So it was very important that we go back. You saw the emails about, I think it was for Cambodia, charging 3,800. That is something we can start thinking about. Can we start reaching out to more CRNAs and say, let's go hike the second highest mountain in Africa. You may not go up to the top, but you can go to maybe to herd 1. But that will help us raise money. One, increase the number of people who will go, increase our influence. We can also spend a little bit of time at the beach with them, right? Limbe is not very far. So again, some ideas for us to start thinking as we think about the future. So what do we do to increase community engagement? Again, we did present at the Cameroon Town Halls. This has been a very, very interesting avenue. When COVID started, the Cameroon Town Hall for Healthcare Professionals was formed as just a Zoom meeting to disseminate information about COVID. But it has evolved to become this hub where people really get on and share ideas. We presented on it, myself with Venatius, and from this, we have been able to reach out all the way even to the minister, because when we were having challenges about visas, that was the only avenue through which we could directly present our case to the Minister of Public Health in Cameroon, because he presented and was answering questions. Myself, Jerome, and Nkam were present, and we presented to him our plea to say, hey, we have been struggling to bring people to Cameroon, and this is a barrier we are facing. And he listened. Now, I think he has suggested that he will be creating a card for Cameroonian, for healthcare providers who want to come to Cameroon so that you don't have to get a visa. If that happens, that is going to be a game changer for us in healthcare. How can ACNAA continue to position itself? We are leaders in this space. We are leading in this space, and that is how I think we should be thinking. We reach out to several cultural groups. Again, the only way we are going to increase the number of Cameroonian nurse anesthetists in the US is by reaching out to more RNs and saying, hey, you can do this.
You know, when I came up here and gave you guys a Zoom talk on the business of anesthesia, you know, I talked to Edwin. I said, Edwin, everyone's heard this old tired thing about the business of anesthesia. And what you really think about is that there are 3 parts of anesthesia. There's the academic part, the clinical part, and then of course the business part. And that's what us as minorities do not get involved in. Anyway, getting back to Edwin, I met Edwin in 2009 when he was a student at Duke University. And back then, this guy was, I think his first or second year out, he was a moderator. And you can tell then that the guy had what it takes. He had the it factor. Many people don't know what the it factor is, and sometimes you can't even describe it. You can't cut the DNA and things like that, but something that you see. And Edwin is in your association, and I talked to Edwin about this in NCAM too. You guys have done a fantastic job of putting this together. When I did your first Zoom meeting and I looked up what you guys are doing things from a structure perspective that very few people can do. And you guys hang out together and you guys give information. And I was talking to one young lady that's up at Webster University. How in the world does 6 Cameroonians get to Webster University and they don't know each other? And that's incredible. That's incredible, you know? And I always say when I go to diversity meetings, when you have a bunch of minorities, this is an illusion, because this is not what anesthesia is about. We have 2.5% of blacks in anesthesia, so enjoy it now. So when you go to a hospital and you're you know, make sure that you bring your A game to the meeting. NCAM, again, you know, I just did this talk in Ohio on 21st century leadership. And Edwin is a great leader, being out front. NCAM leads from behind. He says, go ahead, I'm right behind you. And it's important that you have people in your business that are great people that will assist you. You don't have to be the chief out here, but you can be that Indian person that pushes people. NCAM is very, very quiet, but he has a lot of knowledge. He's the only person I know that finished anesthesia school and then goes on vacation for 6 months and survives. How do you do that? You know, he sleeps under a tree. Now, it doesn't matter where he sleeps, because this guy is incredible. And then he continues to go out and have jobs and come back to Cameroon or different African countries, because one of the most important parts about your profession is what do you give back. I'm a big proponent of MLK, because he always says, and my last slide will say, so what have you done for others? That's the most important thing that you can do in your profession, is to make sure that you give back to the community. Some people charge for this. I said, what am I going to charge for this? This has been a great profession for me. I was making $50 an hour and I thought I was on top of the world. It was $104,000 a year. You know, it's crazy. Now you're making X amount of dollars and you're saying, I'm just stacking money now because the profession has been great to us. You know, so as we talk about the business of anesthesia, and as Edwin was talking about, this is more of a conversation. This is not going to be a monologue, but it's going to be a dialogue. Because what I found out in 21st century leadership is that I had to break it down into baby boomers, X's, millennials, and Z's. And all you guys are confusing. Eventually, you guys would get back to be a baby boomer. You grew up liberal, then you become very conservative because you don't want to pay taxes. And that's all it is, you know. What are those things? And Edwin says, you know, John, I'm doing all this research, but I got to make sure that I take care of my kids. And because what we don't have in our community is generational wealth. Because I don't care all this money and all the money you have and all the cars and all the bling bling and all this stuff. That is not when you die. What they're gonna say? What did he do? It's nothing worse than going to a funeral and you have an insignificant person that you can't talk about something that allows you to say, this is what this guy did for me. If nothing else, you can come to my funeral and says, he interviewed me 10 years ago. Hopefully, you know, you don't want people making things up, right? And so it's important that we continue to help each and every one of us out. As I was thinking about what should I say about, you know, as far as business of anesthesia, my group has been very, very successful. There's a lot of things out here in anesthesia you can do. It's never been a better time in anesthesia. You don't have to even, if you got a pulse and you can breathe, they'll give you a job. Years ago, you had to interview and all this stuff. Now, unless you work for me, I'm going to interview you and I want to know everything about you because, you know, I'm like Chick-fil-A. You know, I'm the same everywhere across the board. You know, I was doing this thing on 21st century leadership and I said, what is it about the New York Yankees? The New York Yankees says this right here, is that you don't have first of all, if you work for us, you can't have facial hair. The second thing is that you're not going to have your name on the back of the uniform. And so we are only New York, right? And so you have to get to the point where you are not an individual, but you are a part of a great organization. Cameroonians, I'm Cameroonian. I don't care what shade you are, I'm a Cameroonian. I don't care how much money I make, I'm a Cameroonian. That's what we have to do. The same thing with Chick-fil-A. No matter where you go, they're the same. You know, what's the slogan? They say, maybe you guys will eat chicken. I eat chicken, okay? I forget what they say, but they say, my pleasure is something else. And everyone has actually incorporated that into their talks. Last thing is this, is that one of the most important things is sharing information. I get a call from Terry. Is Terry here? Yeah, Terry's here. 6:30 in the morning, Terry calls me. I know he's not wishing me good morning. You know, he wants to know something. He says, John, I got an opportunity and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, Terry, there's a couple things you need to know. And we went through it because the most important thing about the information that I have is that my life is an open book, and if you want to know something at any time of the day, I will talk to you about it because the only way that we're going to get out of this mess that we're in is to share information. And that's what I specialize in. All right. I'm not going to make any money. I like to make some money off you guys, not unless you want to work for under what the standard is, and I don't do that, to be honest. And I gave you this lecture before, and I talk about the Sankofa bird. It's a bird, mystical bird out of Ghana. And what's important about this right here is that, first of all, how many people are students here? Got a few students. How many people 1 year out of school or 2 years out of school? Okay, good. And then we have CNAs that have been out of school for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years. And so the Sankofa bird is this right here, is that he can walk forward and always look back. Now, you guys that don't have any experience, you got no past, right? But a person like me has been around for 15, 20, 25 years. I can give you a lot of information about what I've learned. I've made more mistakes, you know, in my life as far as anesthesia because I didn't have any mentors. I'm throwing things up against the wall. If they stick, fine. If not, I move on. But what I like is this right here. If you are a good listener, and if you do not mind talking to people, to ask about different things in anesthesia, then I think that you'll grow. The reason I have people in my group that are boomers, X's, I don't have any Z's because Z's, you know, it's to be determined. I don't know what y'all are thinking, right? And millennials, right? I make sure that they help me to understand what am I doing in anesthesia, right? What I did this year is this right here, is that I broke my whole organization down and started from the bottom up because what I did 10 years ago is gone. AI has come in and they've changed everything. I was paying, you know, and I'll tell you about money too because I think you got to know about money. I was paying $33,000 credit card fees last year. We made over $2 million last year, $33,000. I talked to a buddy of mine, he said, John, go to Stacks. Stacks is an app on my phone that I can get everyone's credit card, because I do some insurance, most of mine is cash and carry. And I get the person's credit card, put it in there, they charge me $2.99 a month. I just made $30,000 because I sat here and said, self-reflection and self-evaluation will always make you more money. AI and stuff is here that I said, I had no idea. I'm paying all this thinking money. I done lost $60,000 or $90,000 by ignorance. You know, so you make sure that you keep somebody that's younger than you in your organization.
I feel really honored that the organization has chosen Maryland to host its first conference after COVID. Must have been 4 years, right? And we really appreciate every one of you choosing this state. How many are you from out of state? How many out of state CRNAs? Oh, great. So guess what now? The market is very good in Maryland. And so I want to encourage you, if you would like to move here, we are open and welcome. I'm telling you that there's jobs galore. And John will attest to that. Alexi, big ups, second time today, would attest to that. Natasha, we have a lot of Maryland CRNAs, Manor Board in the corner there, here to support you guys and to support me. Just a few little facts about Manor. The goal of the organization is to protect and to enhance the practice of Maryland CRNAs. We have about 900 providers in Maryland who we are responsible for. So 700 CRNAs and 210 SRNAs. And this year was mostly a relationship building year for us. We have new legislators in our the committees that impact our practice. And so over the previous years, we've passed a prescriptive authority bill last year, which basically allows us to prescribe, administer or order medications for patients who we have an established relationship with for a 10-day supply in like an outpatient setting or any kind of setting. And that's just one of the things that we are working towards, expanding our practice further. It's kind of like this, you can't go after the big goal, you have to kind of chip away at it and just let them know that we're here incrementally, just be like, all right, pounce a little bit and then bring it back, pounce a little bit and bring it back. Some other things that we're going to be working on is trying to establish access for anesthesia care for dental surgery or dental anesthesia patients. At this point, they require some kind of permit, and that's very restricting. So we're asking, or we're working with a task force to see if we can have that removed from their regulations. I know you guys know about the APRN Compact. If you're in school, you know how many states need to enroll in this to be for it to be enacted, right? So how many? You in school? Anybody in school here? The answer is 7, and currently it's 2. And Maryland, we were working towards trying to get this done. It passed in the House, but not in the Senate. So hopefully next year it can be something we work towards. But right now it's only 2 states, and I think overall maybe like 9 states had introduced it into legislation, but I'm not certain for the other states which ones have passed. There was a PA legislation this year that was trying to remove the provision that we had that stated that PAs would not be able to provide general anesthesia. They kind of removed that on the slate, but it didn't pass in the Senate or the House. So we're just watching these bills. We have a great lobbyist that at the beginning of the year tells us, you know, which bills will impact our practice. So every week we get something that says, these are the bills that are being heard. These are the bills that will that I think will pass. These are the key players. So this is what is happening behind the scenes for the organization. We're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. There's like, who said it? The pack chair. There's like battles in the galaxy back there where you don't even know. We're fighting. All these fights are going on. And I know the big thing is the AA regulation. So we didn't have any AA legislation this year, but we supported states that had legislation, specifically Virginia. We have a lot of CRNAs who live in Virginia, live in Maryland, work in Virginia. That's what so live in Maryland but work in Virginia. And we solicited support from the Maryland CRNAs to say, hey, this is what is going on in the state that you work in, and you need to send word out to the legislators to say this is impacting my practice. So every day it is always something. It could be a budget concern, it could be, a new key player, a legislator who may not know about CRNA practice. So that's what we did as well. We hosted 2 dinners, one for the House committee and one for the Senate committee, and both successful dinners. And we all have to remember that these individuals are people also. So we're able to form personal relationships with these people outside of us putting our plug in like, hey, if some legislation comes through, make sure you just kind of sign that. So we keep the members, we're very transparent with our dealings. We keep the members informed. But there's always, I'm proud to be the president, Amanda, because even though this is a relationship building year, we don't have any active legislation, we still have a lot of things that we have accomplished. We're going to try to amend the bylaws, engage membership, and those are the key things that we're doing. How can any CRNA be engaged with the association? So one, serving on the board or a committee on the board. We have nominations out. So if you're a Maryland-based CRNA and you're willing to serve, give your time. We would greatly appreciate it. We appreciate diversity on the board. It allows us to have input from different people, and I think a diverse board is very necessary. I think our board right now is pretty diverse. Donating to the PAC. One thing you should know, portion of the AANA, dues, comes to Maryland. But if you donate to the AANA PAC, it does not come to Maryland. You have to specifically donate to the Maryland Association of Nurse Anesthetists PAC. And we hosted a free spring webinar where we just accepted donations to PAC, and that was very successful. But even if you're out of state, this applies. Donating to your PAC affects your practice. There's always something going on behind the scenes. It's not money you're throwing away. It is well invested. I donate every year to both ANA and the Maryland PAC. What else? Making yourself available for testimony. If there's a bill that the state has, needs to provide input on, and making yourself available to attend like legislative events or dinners so that you can go and meet the people who make the decisions about the practice within the state that you serve.
What are some practice settings that we can do as CRNAs? We can do ambulatory surgery center, hospital-based settings. Dr. Bing talked about a lot of this, so I'm not gonna reiterate it. The one thing that's up and coming is med spas. And you guys might have heard a lot about that, injectables. You can make a lot of money there. My basis is the military. And I didn't actually understand the advocacy part of it because I was socialized into the fact that we were independent practitioners. I was interchangeable with anesthesiologists. It wasn't until I went into the reserves, had my civilian practice, and I was like, what in the heck is going on out here? I had no idea. So being a part of something greater than myself, that's where I came from. Just different. This was my team. We actually got to sign those bombs that went out, and we were a little hyper because that happened right after the Manchester bombing in England. And my CCAT doc put on it, from Manchester with love. So, you know. Roles and responsibilities. We can be an educator, political advocate, researcher, administrator, independent contractor, a consultant. You know, military humanitarian, you could be an author, you can be an entrepreneur. This is part of, I'm a simulation, healthcare military simulation educator. In addition to that, because once you're deployed, you're the person that has the most knowledge about what just happened downrange and can actually help them through it. So this is actually a spinal epidural workshop at Pitt. So this is one of my favorite respiratory therapists. We actually had an air show in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he was showing kids how to intubate. And I just thought about like how exciting that was to start them off so young, you know, introducing them to our profession. So why is advocacy so important? Some things that are happening in Pennsylvania right now are Board of Nursing licensing issues. It takes a long time to get that license. Tita actually experienced this. It's very frustrated with it. Dawn was getting text messages about it as we were coming up here. So this is a lot of words on here, so I'm just going to talk about it. The state of Pennsylvania was trying to do a compact license, and they were trying to figure out crimes and how that would be associated with licensing going from state to state. So there was this act, and I believe it was like Act 53 that they did, and all they were doing was rule promulgation for it. So they ended up making more criminal activity against nurses in order for them to get their licensing. Well, so now in the state of Pennsylvania, that was not the original intent of the bill. So now in the state of Pennsylvania, there's 99 crimes that you could be charged with where you could lose your nursing license. That's not good. For physicians, it's 30. So we brought this up to we have a lawyer, you know, in Harrisburg, talking to the State Board of Nursing. You know, that's not fair, what's going on? State Board of Nursing pushed back just recently, and they said nurses have more one-on-one contact with patients, so they should, you know, they're with them all the time. So we're trying to work on this. They're finally understanding that it might not be fair, but we have a long way to go. We need people at the table to mitigate these things. What are your attributes? Every single one of us in this room has something that they have a strength. You know, we all have our weaknesses too, but how can you use that strength to further your organization, to further your profession? So I like this quote from Mark Twain: good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So just learn from everything.
I have a superpower. And my superpower is I say yes to everything, and then I try and figure it out later. So when Dr. Wiggins emailed me, she's like, do you want to go down to Maryland with me to, you know, talk at the Cameroonian American Association? I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then I sat back and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? So I just wanted to curtail off of her presentation. Being a program director, you know, at Penn, it's taught me a lot. And even with that role, it's a role that I never expected to have, nor did I ever want it, to be honest. It was not anything that I graduated from anesthesia school and said, I want to be a program director somewhere and this is where it's going to be. I was very happy in my clinical practice at St. Christopher's Hospital. Doing pediatric anesthesia, it was, you know, just my heart. That's just something that I've always done. And I was always part-time faculty at Penn. And with that role as part-time faculty, it just gave me just enough, like I had, you know, students, I would mentor them or, you know, just be that emotional support for the most part. And as things worked out, you know, leadership in Penn changed in what it was like 2017, 2018. It was a whole lot of things going on at the University of Pennsylvania at that time. And again, with my superpower of just saying yes, they said, if we offered you this role, is it something you want to do? And initially I was like, well, I'm not sure if I'd be really good at it, but I didn't know what good at it meant anyway. So, which was probably a good thing for the students. And I just said, sure, because I always knew that I wanted to advocate for the profession, at least from the role of a student. So it just gave me that opportunity in order to do that. when we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, we always, there's so much talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, but what does that really mean from an educator's perspective? And when I took over, I looked at how our numbers were, what students we were admitting, how we were admitting students, and things of that nature. And with the help of my assistant program director, Dr. Angela DiDonato, we just took a really in-depth look and said, we need to change how we're doing things. Admissions should be holistic, right? We have students that come in and I look at their transcripts and we do all of that and I'm like, okay, will this person fight for what they want? And that's what's most important to me. We've turned down students with 3.9 GPAs and they reach back out to us and they're devastated, I get it. And they ask us well, why did you turn me down? And first and foremost, I'm like, this is why. And you talked about emotional intelligence. And just having that emotional intelligence on how you approach a situation is really important. So I just wanted to talk about what the role is of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in professional development, but it starts really with how we educate students in the universities and in the CRNA or SRNA setting. My objectives today, they'll be brief, and as this will be a little brief and we can discuss later, but what is multicultural education? And I feel like if we don't go into multicultural education, when you bring students in from diverse backgrounds, you don't know how to educate those students. And it's really important to have that basis in order to do that. We're going to briefly review some concepts of JEDI, compare equality and equity, discuss what it means to be a global citizen. So if we are educating students in our anesthesia programs and they want to go back to their native countries to deliver anesthesia, we have to create a global citizenship for those students. Discuss what types of educators are out there and explain what culturally responsive teaching is on my, within anesthesia programs. So global citizenship is really just acquiring a knowledge of various diverse communities. I too, like Kaya, I'm from a Jamaican descent. And so, my family always grew up, you always had to look at yourself. If something went wrong, look at yourself. How did you contribute to that? And not everyone from every community comes from that background. So we have students that, they think that everything they say is right all the time. But me, when I was wrong, I would always look at myself like, Donna, what did you do not to learn that concept? But not all students are that way. Another aspect of global citizenship is how do we interact outside of our own culture? So that's really important to gain the understanding of acting outside of your culture. You want to understand similarities and respect differences within our student population. And that begins, again, with admitting students from different populations. And I think that that's what kind of helped me say, students aren't cookie cutter, and they're all different, and they have very different needs, and we'll talk about some of that. Interact respectfully regardless of a student's group identity. And it doesn't just start with the color of your skin, but we have students who are of different abilities, students who are, gay, straight, and things like that. And I have to look at myself as an educator and how do I interact with each of these different student groups? And identify how stereotyping and prejudices impact relationships, whether they are at the university end or within the ORs as well. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had, even with my students, when they have an interaction with a preceptor or somebody in clinical, and I have to look at myself and how am I going to respectfully address the clinical preceptor as well as respectfully address the student. We'll talk about being a mirror and being a window. We all know that there are multiple cultural groups within education, and some of them are very visual to us. We know it's race, your ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation in this list. But those are the things that kind of stick out when you first, meet somebody. If I walk in a room, I can't hide the fact that I'm a black woman, right? It just is what it is. And, sometimes people will say to me, well, you're the director of a program. And I'm like, yeah, well, that matters to a degree because I'm still a black female. And I walk in with that already in my mind. I have to conduct myself in a different manner than somebody who is maybe not a black female. So these are the primary dimensions of diversity. We have age, race, ethnicity, heritage, gender, physical abilities and or qualities, sexual affection and orientation, and mental abilities and characteristics. We look at these from the student's perspective and take those in. But what some people don't recognize in education specifically is that there are secondary dimensions of diversity for students. Educational background, whether you came from a BSN program or students that had a BSN, but they also come to us with an MBA, or they're a nurse practitioner and now they're starting an anesthesia program. They've had an educational experience, and we have to make sure that we're looking at that, because what we're teaching them, that we sort of draw on their education as well. How people communicate. Everybody likes to talk about being how they learn and things like that, whether they are a visual learner, kinetic learner, and they kind of put themselves in 4 different categories. But if you really think about it, you're kind of all of those categories and so much more than that, because no one just learns kinetically just by doing. Sometimes you have to write out things on note cards, things of that nature. So I have to think about that as an educator when I am looking at my students in classrooms. Their work background. Where did you come from? Surgical ICU, PICU, neuro ICU. We don't accept emergency room experience at Penn, but all of those different styles. And one of the things that I did, as I was looking at like education and multicultural education specifically, with our cohort that came in May, when they first came in, everyone's kind of standing in the room. No one really knows anybody, where they're from, their backgrounds. And we divided the room up into basically four quadrants. And I said, oh, okay, anybody who's from the South, go stand over there. If you're from the Northeast, stand over here. If you're from California or the West Coast, stand here in the Midwest. And so students stood in their little respective areas. They kind of talked to each other, and then we mixed things up again. Did you work in a surgical ICU? Stand over there. Pediatric ICU over here. What that showed the students and what they got from it was that you are not just who you are on surface, right? You are multiple things. You have multiple experiences, and that's what makes this population so diverse. We can interact in different areas because there are similarities that we have with other people. Other secondary dimensions of diversity: income, marital status, military experience like Dr. Wiggins has, religious beliefs, our geographical locations, parental status. We have some parents that come in and their needs may be different, and I can't say, okay, you're a mom, you have to take care of your 5-year-old, she's sick. That doesn't make a difference to me, and I don't mean that in a bad way as far as our students, but there is some form of equity and equality within the program as well, regardless. So some considerations for the students. What do we do most as an educator? As an educator, I stand in front of a classroom, I teach to the students, and then the students go home, or they do whatever they do afterwards. The students, in essence, have to assimilate to my methods of teaching, whatever that looks like. But what does that do to the student or the learner? All we are doing is we're disabling their ability to learn and achieve at a very full capacity, because I'm having them fit into my box of what I need to do. So Dr. DiDonato, again, my assistant program director, and I, we sit down and we discuss these things, like how are we going to teach students? Just 3 weeks ago, we did Jeopardy/Family Feud with our first-year students. Why did we do that? Because some students actually need that information in front of them, and they need to be able to make mistakes and work with a team and things like that in order to learn. This last round this was an interesting concept that I was reading about in teacher education. One of my cohorts of students, they're in the middle of the program right now. And I feel like the middle of the program is probably the most difficult, right? Because in the beginning, everyone's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Everyone wants to learn anesthesia. They're so excited. And at the end, everybody's ready to graduate and move on with their lives. In the middle is a black hole. They have their DNP project work. They're doing rotations. They don't know the end from the beginning. They can't see the light. And so what is happening is our middle cohort, they don't do so well on some of the exams that we're doing. So what did I do? I was like, how can I increase their knowledge base and things like that? I looked into what's called collaborative test taking. And And I thought, okay, I'm gonna like take a shot at this. And so what I did with their last exam was I said, hey, I'm gonna put you in groups of 5. And you take the exam within your group of 5 people. And they were like, wait, what? And I said, yeah, we're gonna do this. And they're like, okay. So I randomized the groups. I just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like anyone who has played sports. You know, the coach just counted off and that was kind of your group. So that's what I did so that there wasn't, you know, any kind of, I don't know, you work with your friends, but now you've got to figure out how to work with other people as well. So what we did with collaborative test taking, everything is online, and they had to have a predetermined time when they were going to get together and work on this test. Everyone has the same answers. And so far I've had 2 groups of students take the test. I'm a very liberal test taker. I open the test up and I'm like, take it by Sunday at, you know, whatever time. So what I did, the first group took the test and they instantaneously gave me feedback. And what their feedback was I learned so much with talking through rationales for answers that I'm not going to forget that information, because we actually had lively discussion about, well, why not this answer? And it's this, you know, and so on and so forth. Did they get things wrong? Of course they did. But overall, their experience was really good. So am I going to continue that with every test? Probably not, because there are certain things that I feel like students need to, you know, show a lot of, I guess, rigor with, for lack of better words. But there's nothing wrong with doing things differently than what you normally do. You don't have to have the sit down, the Scantron, and all of those things all of the time. If you're more creative in your approach as an educator, students get creative as well by how they're going to learn.
Hello, my name is Miriam Denature. I'm a nurse anesthesia student from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. It was very great coming to this event because I learned a lot about mission trips, and I met different anesthesia providers. As a new SRNA coming out of school, it's good to have people there to mentor you. You know, they've been guiding me throughout CRNA school, and coming out is good to have people that can mentor you about getting a new job, signing a contract, and what to expect. And it's just inspiring to keep helping other SRNAs out there, just to mentor them throughout their journey of becoming a CRNA. Thank you, ACNAA, and I really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
My name is Muriel Kameni. I'm very happy to be here tonight at this conference here, ACNAA conference. ACNAA has been very supportive, like from the beginning since I started my application process. They've been mentoring me, they've been encouraging me when I was losing hope. And I just want to encourage anyone, if you feel like anesthesia is meant for you, don't hesitate, keep pushing and apply, and ACNAA, all the mentors will be there to help you.
My name is Maria Array. I'm a SRNA. I'm so happy to be at ACNAA Conference 2023. I had such a lovely time just interacting with everyone, talking to various CRNAs, SRNAs, and I hope we continue to do this in the future so we can continue to build a community and just keep being the best we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Iris Agbertabi. I'm actually an SRNA class of 2024, and this is actually my first ACNAA meeting. I got in contact with this group about 3 years ago when I was planning to apply for CRNA school, and a friend referred me to them, and they have really been a backbone from the time I decided to apply to the time I got in. I'm really grateful. I came to this program, and I'm hoping more people will try to figure out what we're doing and come and join us. Thank you so much.
I'm really enjoying myself. All the speakers were really informative. I learned a lot about entrepreneurship as a CRNA, and I look forward to even networking with some of the presenters.
Hello, my name is Leslie Awasum. I'm a CRNA and a co-founder of Excite Capital Investments. I'm here at the ACNAA Convention 2023 here in Columbia, Maryland, in my neighborhood. Meeting some amazing minds in the healthcare space and just networking with some great people. It's been an amazing convention so far. It's really great to be part of this organization and to support this organization in its mission as well.
I love the vibe of this. I love the community. I love the education, the information, so different than what I'm used to at all of our regular annual conferences.
Hello everyone, my name is Candice Ngor, and I'm the current Secretary General of ACNAA. It's been a pleasure welcoming everyone to Columbia, Maryland for our 6th annual conference. So far, the conference is going on very well. It's been a lot of hard work and dedication from the ACNAA members. And I want to thank every single one of our attendees today that came to support ACNAA. A lot of knowledge was shared, and we also thank, personally our guest speakers, because the topics were very interesting and very dear to ACNAA's current mission.